All right, Grady, I always like asking this. It's kind of a generic question, but you have the freedom to take it in any direction you'd like. What were you like growing up, and what were some of your interests and the things that maybe defined either you or your upbringing or your childhood?
Yeah, I think that for the most part, sports was pretty much my family's life. It was my connection with my dad. I was a baseball player early on, and something that he enjoyed following and watching. So definitely baseball. Played a lot. Played through college. Played a little bit of other sports here, but sports certainly was something. Always a competitive guy. Always somebody that liked the competitive nature of the game and was okay. Didn't like to lose, but if he got beat, understood that sometimes somebody's just better that day. So I think that's really where everything started with me and how I kind of became the person I am. It was certainly through sports.
So you mentioned playing baseball in college. You went to George Washington. What was that experience like? Not only the baseball side of it, but maybe things that ended up impacting you once you stopped playing and began your professional journey working in sports.
Yeah, I think there's transition points in everybody's life, right? When you go off to college, when you go to high school, when you finish whatever level you finish, the thing that you love to do is always a pivot and a challenge period. I will say the first thing to comment about going to George Washington University, wonderful school, wonderful education, pretty good baseball program. Actually, the year before I got there, they went to the NCAA Division I regionals, so they were for a private, expensive school. They did a pretty good job. However, the Texas boy was not prepared for the way that baseball starts, and so I guess the first thing I recognized is playing baseball in the snow sucks, and it's something that I don't think that should ever happen. So I know the baseball in a regular world, it gets into the playoffs into October and November, and I can't imagine how bad it gets because it's cold. But played there, had a great time, very, very competitive. Any Division I school is super competitive, and learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about perseverance and working through things because every year they're bringing in another player that can take your spot. And the competitive nature of things, which I really take a lot into business itself and love when I'm working with other athletes that were or former athletes because they know how to get knocked down and pull themselves back up again. That's something that I think is really a real world scenario, and you get that a lot in sports. And then fortunately for me, I had an assistant coach that moved along to working in baseball on the business side, and he called me up, and it was kind of a hard thing to hear, but reality was, hey, you're not good enough to play in Major League Baseball, but you've got the brain for it. Why don't you come work for me at the Greensboro Bats in North Carolina? It was a single A team for the New York Yankees at the time, and so I actually took a summer off playing baseball, which is rarely you do when you're a collegiate athlete, and got to see the ins and outs of a minor league baseball team. So went from selling tickets to setting up picnics to selling cold beer and programs. In fact, was even the mascot for half a day. So got to see all the perspective because clearly working in sports is something that really you got to understand what you're getting into before you do it. So I had that transition and was able to actually get a job right out of school. I got an internship with the Texas Rangers, where you are now, and it's history from there.
So before we get into your start with the Rangers, we both went to Green Hill, and this is not this question is not meant to tee you up for some easy promo. I want you to be honest. Going to a private school is not something that everyone gets to do. I know for me, I had a great experience, and I look at where I am now, and Green Hill was influential, for a number of reasons. But I don't want you to feel obligated to agree just for the sake of it. Did you have a similar experience getting, that sort of an opportunity and experience at a private school? Did that impact you at all?
Yeah, I think look, Green Hill was great for me. I will say it was a different time, a different era. Green Hill now is different than Green Hill was today. We don't need to get into that. My kids used to go there. They don't anymore, so I can leave it at that. But For me, it was great. I could play baseball, I could play volleyball, I could play basketball, and again, I was pretty good at baseball. I was not very good at volleyball or basketball, but I got a chance to play and have a good time. I was able to be in student government. I was able to be in choir. I was able to try and be on the stage. And so I think it gives you the ability to try a bunch of different things and see what you like. And I think that's part of what a small private school wants you to do, right? In fact, I was a 6'2" senior, 180 pounds, and I can tell you the football team really wanted me to play, but not a lot of, you got to get all you can with the small schools. So, but I'll tell you that the baseball, the one thing about the private school is it is a little bit homogeneous. You do get a little bit wrapped up in some of the unrealistic facts that not everybody is cut from the same cloth and comes from from the money and things like that. So playing baseball, I was able to kind of have both ends and see things from both sides. And so it was something that really kind of gave me some perspective and some balance, which I liked. So, yeah, I think going to a small private school, it was great for me, not for everybody. And I also think it does. Look, I went to you the same. We knew the same kids since, I went there since the second grade. So, a little bit of change and diversity seems to be good for people, but Green Hill certainly worked out for me.
All right, so you kind of have, and you mentioned this earlier when you talked about filling all sorts of roles, including being the mascot, but you definitely have kind of that traditional blue-collar path, starting as an intern, doing all sorts of different things, working your way up. You mentioned getting that chance with the Rangers. How did that opportunity specifically come about? Was it just as simple, like, I'm going to apply for this and I got it, or was there is there more of a story to how you ended up starting with the Rangers?
Yeah, I don't know if it's much of a story. I applied for a summer internship the Thanksgiving before when I came home, and honestly was not selected. So that summer of '96, I actually went and worked for the Summer Olympics, the Centennial Olympic Games in Atlanta, and I worked for the USOC in the baseball department and worked at Georgia Tech Stadium, and so got some of that experience. And then I actually went out to California, was chasing a girl who I quickly found had zero interest in me. And the Rangers actually called because, as you know, baseball is a long season, and all of their interns were going back to school. And since I had already graduated, they called and said, hey, look, we got a spot here if you want it. And so I was actually kind of a post-summer intern, which came back, and there was transition going on. There was change of some leadership there, which actually gave me opportunity because I just came in and did my job, and I guess about 5 months later, the new marketing VP came in and I guess liked what I was doing and offered me my first full-time job, which was, again, getting into sports is difficult, so I was very gracious. Even though running a youth ballpark and running camps and clinics and tournaments is a very demanding and extremely rough go for a 23-year-old single kid that doesn't need to watch 8 to 12-year-olds play that much baseball ever. But I guess, again, it got me my start, and so it'll always have a special place in my heart.
At that time, did you have, or do you remember what your long-term goals were once you realized, okay, maybe the business side of sports is what I'm going to pursue? Because, and we're going to get into your time with the Renegades as the president. You've held several high-ranking positions, whether it was with the Hicks Sports Group or specifically the Stars of the Rangers. Did you have those sorts of goals then, or were you just kind of like palms up, hey, I'm just going to figure this thing out? I really don't necessarily have a plan in place.
Yeah, I like sports, and I never knew, because especially back then, nobody really saw as much as this as an opportunity as they do today, right? All the schools have a sports management or sports marketing program. Everybody sees these things, and it's big business, right? Back when I was graduating, there was a couple schools that had the program, and heck, the sports management program wasn't even in the business school. So I didn't really think of it that way, and so I just figured, I'm the type of guy that you surround yourself with people that you can learn from, and good things happen, and young enough and dumb enough to just kind of go with the flow. And As I said, I was running the youth ballpark out there, and about a year and a half in, it just was just a grind, and I needed to move on. And I was actually thinking of going back to business school to get my MBA, as many people do. And the sponsorship guy came in and said, "Hey, why don't you come give sponsorship sales a try?" And very fortunate, because rarely do you go from basically a glorified intern to selling sponsorships, but I guess they saw something in me and gave me that opportunity. But to be fair and to be honest, I didn't even think of myself as a salesperson. I thought all salespeople were like used car salesmen. No disrespect, I have a lot of friends in the car sales business, but that's what I felt like. And but what I really learned is that sales is all about relationship. It's all about getting to know people, getting people to like you, and being real. And so I really realized that I was in the relationship business, not in the sales business. And that really kicked in. Now, merging with the Dallas Stars in 1999 and the Stars winning the Stanley Cup and selling that was much easier. So that actually helped project me into the business side of it. But it really wasn't until I got into the sponsorship sales side that I said, hey, this is real deal, and I can make some money, and I can meet some people and have a really good time. And I'm sure glad I did it.
All right, so I want to get into that 99 season and some of the Rangers' successful years. But just in general, what was it like your time at the Hicks Sports Group? Tom Hicks, obviously a really powerful man, influential in the sports world, especially at that time, owning multiple properties, including 2 of the 4 teams here in the Metroplex. What sort of experience did that give you? And when you look back on that, how did that help you grow and become the successful person that you've become today?
Well, I'm extremely grateful to Tom Hicks and the family for not anything particularly they did for me, but just opportunity. And opportunity looks you in the face every single day, and you got to be ready to jump on it. And you hit the nail on the head. I was a baseball guy. I played baseball. I was selling for the Rangers briefly. And remember, the Rangers won their division 96, 98, 99. So if you're in that environment, it's positive. We all know what the DFW market looks like with a Texas Ranger team in the playoff. It's fanatical. It's crazy, especially in the summer. So, I was having mad success and honestly was like, man, this is great. But then a curveball was thrown with Tom Hicks buying the Texas Rangers, and he basically directly threw us all into not just the baseball sales business, but the hockey sales business. And I'll be honest, I knew nothing about hockey. I just hadn't been around it. But clearly, having to sell hockey and luckily with them winning in 99 and going back to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2000 and losing in Game 6, it was such an amazing experience that now I'm selling basically 2 playoff contending teams in a city that loves its sports teams, especially when they win. And that opportunity was something that not many people get to do in sports. And particularly if you want to grow and move up in the world, you got to move cities and move teams and do all these things. But for me, I had the ability to sell hockey. I had the ability to sell baseball. And as if you remember, the Mesquite Championship Rodeo, which we, I don't even own a pair of boots or listen to country music, but I ate plenty of barbecue out there and learned about that. So really just learning about different ways of sports, different things, different strategies, right? Some rodeos are just over the weekend. Well, this was like a season-long rodeo. So learning how different things to do it and giving me different perspective was something that was extremely exciting. And then when he bought Liverpool, well, that was short-lived and not sure it went as well as anybody had hoped. I had the chance to kind of dig into European Premier League football and see what that was all about. And that was something that, again, I went to a Liverpool game, and it was an amazing experience. So lots of great things, but the biggest thing is that I was able to stay basically with the same organization, but get a ton of experience and move up the ranks without having to leave the city or switch teams.
I was going to ask you about the rodeo. I was going to tell you, I think I'm the only person in Texas without a cowboy hat and a belt buckle, but maybe I'm not the only one after all.
You just found your other guy.
There you go. So, I think, and you talked about just how much easier maybe it made your job when the teams were winning. What other experiences came with the Stars winning the Stanley Cup and the Rangers making the playoffs in those seasons, and then obviously it took a while until they got back to the playoffs. But just what was that like beyond maybe making the sales part a little bit easier? What was just the general experience like being a part of an organization having that level of success?
Yeah, I think early on, and as I said it before, sports was still not as sophisticated as it is today. Teams were being sold, but not nearly for the amount of money that they were doing. I mean, just the numbers were so much. So as an organization, we were smaller. We were family oriented. Everybody cared for each other, and I know we'll get into the Renegades, but that's really stuck with me the most. Is that you can do your job, you can work hard, you can have high expectations, but you still can do it with looking out for the best interest for everybody, not just for your people that work for you, but also for the managers ahead. So, I still remember, those times early on, and how great it was just because things were so tight-knit. We were just a tight family. And, there was, when you merged the Stars and the Rangers, the cultures of the two back in the day from the front office perspective was a bit different. So, you did have a little bit of interesting clashes there, but I was so young and so just open-minded that I didn't really get caught up into those politics. But, those experiences and those playoff games and certainly winning the Stanley Cup and I'll still remember losing the Stanley Cup. Unfortunately, you remember the losses more than the wins sometimes, but that Game 6 was a tough one against New Jersey, and just those experiences that people like to do because they love sports, but then when you're actually vested in because you work for the team, it's really hard to describe it. It's why I really love what I've been able to doing so far.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and again, just even to fast forward, it really is what made that 2010 Rangers season more special. As you remember, the team was in bankruptcy and there was a bunch of turmoil, and honestly, the team was not very good. No expectations. We had a very small staff because we just split from the Stars, and we were able to take this team that was kind of wondering what the heck's going to happen, and we made the playoffs and then made it to the World Series, beating the arch rival Yankees, and it was just something that remember the people I was standing around and sitting around, and I know they do too. And it's again, it's just one of those things that just is what makes sports so great.
All right, so you take a bit of a leap, and you get an opportunity to join the XFL and become the president of the Dallas Renegades. I remember having a conversation with you after you'd accepted the role, and you kind of talked to me about what pushed you in that direction. I'm wondering if you could kind of rehash why you decided to leave a team and an organization, a part of a league that was established, and take a chance and get this great opportunity with an upstart league that I think a lot of people thought second time around was going to have a lot of success.
Yeah, look, I had once the Rangers and the Stars split, as I mentioned, went back to the Rangers for the 10 and 11 season, and then when the Stars were sold, jumped back over there for the last, I guess, in 2012, and we had a great run. We really helped kind of pull that team financially out from where it was because it went through bankruptcy as well, and great ownership came in to give us all the resources we needed to do a great job, and made the playoffs kind of every other year, and honestly, I guess the last season that I was there, they made it to the second round of the playoffs and lost in Game 7, triple overtime to the Blues, and just a great experience. But I was comfortable, and the president there, Brad Alberts, and CEO Jim Lights are terrific people, and they care for me, and I will say they didn't want to see me go. I think that we had a good thing going, but I really had to put things in perspective, and what I realized is I wasn't, I was doing my job and I was working hard, but I was extremely comfortable, right? I had a great job, I was making decent money, I had some good perks, and I really knew what was going on, and the XFL was the unknown, and what I really found is that comfort sometimes can be crippling, right? It can make you stay in a position, in a place that you are, because the unknown is a bit scary. Risk, people don't like it. And, just something shook loose at one point where I said, you know what, sometimes you got to take a risk, and sometimes you got to give it a shot. And I looked, and there's a lot of positives. I love football. I love being in Dallas, and it was giving me the opportunity. And honestly, I was going to be able to run the entire ship from the business standpoint. So believe me, it was not an easy decision, and it was made a lot easier with the support of my friends and family. And I will tell you, the Dallas Stars were incredibly supportive and honestly said, look, we love you here, but you got to go take this job. This is great for you, and we wish you well. So it was a lot of that, but believe me, it was a lot of painstaking agony going through it, a lot of sleepless nights, and something that, again, it really tests who you are, and it was a decision that was made.
So what's it like being a part of the birth of a league, or I guess in this case the rebirth? What were some of the things? I imagine a president of a team is maybe not handed the same responsibilities prior to their first year or their first year on the job as you were. So what were some of the things that were really fun and exciting for you to have your hands and fingerprints over this new league? What were those first few months like?
Yeah, I think that first and foremost, the people in the XFL that I interviewed with and talked to, everybody was on the same page. This is going to be hard, but we are going to do something that we're going to be extremely proud of. And being able to create something from nothing, especially a sports team, that opportunity comes along very, very few times. And so for me, the excitement was, I get to put a team together. I get to put my money where my mouth is, right? I like to have a great culture. Well, I'm going to make sure the culture is strong. I'm going to find great people. But again, we had a very short period of time to put it together. And again, this was not a rebirth. This was a completely separate league from the first time XFL. The only thing that was similar was the name and the fact that Vince MacMahon was behind it. But this league was completely different on purpose. And so we were creating everything from scratch, and we had great help with some consultants and some agencies from the national perspective. But I had to go out there and find a group of people that were as dedicated as I was and as bought in, because we had to figure out everything from soup to nuts. I was running around trying to find office space, and I was working with my friends at the Rangers on the lease agreement of Globe Life Park, to make sure that was all nailed down. And then we had to hold our breath and hope that the football field was constructed in time, because remember, it was still a baseball team until a baseball field until probably 2-3 weeks before we started. So there was a lot of anxiety, but just a lot of pride put into that. And I try not to be dramatic, but it was our baby, and it wasn't just my baby. It was all 23 of us who worked there. It was our baby, and we loved it, and we loved the Renegades, and we were Renegades. And I think that, look, it wasn't perfect, but and we were already playing it for a year or two, ready to go. But all the things that I said before were the things that made it so exciting. Is that going into the unknown is scary, but man, when you get to kind of pick and choose how you do it is very exciting.
Grady, so Oliver Luck had a big role in the league, and while he's maybe not the most public person ever, I think it's easy to understand it with his background and his past responsibilities. Why he was probably such a great guy for that job. I'm curious though, what your experience with Vince MacMahon was like, just because this guy seems so fascinating, and on the surface you might think certain things about him, but then you take a step back and realize that he's created this wrestling empire, and maybe the guy off camera is way different than the guy on camera. I'm just curious if you had enough time with him, or what were your experiences with Vince MacMahon.
Yeah, I had one experience with him. He came in during one of our presidents get-together. So I was the last president hired. So once I was hired, everybody came together with all the head coaches in Stamford, Connecticut, and we basically had quote-unquote league meetings and planning meetings. And Vince came in and sat down with the 8 presidents and basically just kind of talked to us and gave us his thoughts, and we asked him some questions. I can tell you I wasn't I didn't know a lot about him. Look, I know he's a marketing guru, and he's done very, very well with WWE. I know he's a very strong, confident man. But everything in that one meeting, and we spoke for about an hour, a little over an hour, was all positive, all things that he was 100% behind this and in it, and really made us all feel good. I felt comfortable with him. I felt like he was a genuine, positive man and had great intentions for this league, and really, I mean, even during that meeting, talked about what the future may bring after year 1 and year 2 and year 3 are successful.
All right, now speaking of the future, I know we've talked, and you were, I think, one of the reasons why what's gone down is so disappointing is that things were going so well. So instead of asking how did you think things were going, why were things going so well? What were the things that stood out to you that led you to believe that you guys really had something brewing for not just this year, but the next several years?
Well, again, and we were successful within every metric that you look at, from broadcast numbers to attendance to social media numbers and following. The XFL was an overarching, the best startup league ever for the first year, right? And there's a lot of reasons why. The first reason why is people love football. And it's unbelievable how much people love football. The other thing is people want something that's affordable and accessible. We created a league where people could show up for $25 to $100, all lower level seats. And in our case at Globe Life Park, we had $6 beers, which were very affordable, and people came, and it was their team. The naysayers always talked about it wasn't the NFL, and there was no history. People didn't have the history with this team, but people just want to be a part of things. And if you open your arms to them and say, hey, we want you, and we listen to you, and we ask questions, we do surveys, what can we do, how can we be better? People love that. And what was the most telling of how successful we were was when you got to the stadium and you saw all the North Texas and Renegade fans that were dressed up in how they thought a Renegade should look, right? Nobody told them what a Renegade is. We have a logo, but people dressed up, and they had custom hats, and they had capes, and they had bandanas, and they had all these different things. And it just shows you that, yeah, we may have only had 17,000 people in the lower level, which is pretty much a full bowl in a 40,000-seat facility, but all 17,000 of those people are true fans that are yelling and screaming. You don't have the businessmen that are entertaining in suits. Everybody's yelling and screaming. And so you ask the players, they felt like this was a rocking stadium, and we tried to help with all the in-game activities and pregame, tailgating, and all the things that we could do to make things as fun as possible for the fans, and most importantly, affordable. And that's what people want. And some people can't afford to go to some of the sports teams. And I'm not saying other sports teams should change their model. They can't. But that's why the XFL was successful, and that's why people really enjoyed it, was because it could become their own league and their own team, and I really think they embraced it.
How did the decision to not just suspend but shut the league down go down from your perspective? And obviously this is unprecedented. There's no playbook for what the coronavirus kind of presented as far as challenges, but was this something you saw coming? Was the rug kind of pulled from under you? What was that experience like?
Well, I think you could say the proverbial rug was pulled out from under everybody. And I was talking to one of our coaches yesterday, actually, and they were already planning for securing their teams and making trades for next season up until that Wednesday before the Friday that we were let go. And we were planning moving full forward with everything. I had conversation with high-level people that were saying, hey, we have proof of performance. Here's the proof. And as I talked about all the analytics that we had, and it wasn't until probably the Monday before the Friday that everything ended when there was a decision that all of the season ticket holders were given the choice to either get a refund for the rest of the season or they could carry it over to next season. And I think about 40 to 50% actually chose to keep it on the books. So just leave it and let us hold on to it, and they'll buy their season tickets for next year. But at some point, there was a message that we had decided to give them all their money back. And at that point, I think we all realized we were in a little bit of trouble, because nobody likes to give money back, do they? It doesn't work. So did I think we were going to be all terminated? Did I see furlough? Did I say, hey, we're going to stop business until November and see what's going on? 100%. So it was a little bit of again, as you mentioned, the rug was definitely pulled out from underneath us. And I can tell you to a T, people are still trying to grasp reality and figure out what happened, because things were going so well and everybody was having so much fun.
All right, Grady, last thing from me. I referenced our phone call, I think it was this past summer, when you were sharing with me, why you made this decision. And I know you provided that answer a few minutes ago, but I remember hanging up and kind of being pumped up because you did something that a lot of people talk about, but maybe they don't have, not to sound dramatic, but the courage to do. And you took a risk, and you knew that. When you talked to me, you admitted, hey, this is a risk. Again, you're not joining the NFL or the NBA or, an established league. But I was fired up because, it's awesome to be able to do that. And you recognized it was a risk. And I guess I'm just curious, and maybe your thoughts on this, because it's still, relatively speaking, is so fresh or still evolving. But what did you, as someone who spent as much time working as you had prior to this role, what did you learn about yourself from this experience? Was there anything new or anything that you look back on and think about, not just proudly because of the league success, but your own personal challenges and experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how this is going to come across, but I will tell you, I'm extraordinarily proud of myself. I feel that, as I mentioned before, I was so comfortable and I was crippled and I was afraid to take that chance. And what I recognized is me, and even if this is a generalization for other people, is taking a risk is good. Putting yourself and being vulnerable is okay. Because you know what? Even if it fails, and it fails for your fault or nobody else's fault, like a virus, you really learn about who you are and what you can accomplish. I was always pigeonholed as this baseball guy that could sell sponsorships. Well, I put together a football team in a new football league, and we did a great job. Were we perfect? No. Did I know a lot about marketing strategy and tactics? No. But I certainly figured it out. And also, when you hire good people, that's a great thing to do. So I learned that taking a risk is great, and people need to know that it's not if you get knocked down, get back up. And if you get knocked down twice, stand up again. And all those things are fine, because if you have a good head on your shoulders and good support systems and good work ethic, it's going to work out. And I don't know what's next for me. I'm doing a little bit of consulting right now and trying to figure things out. I'm still licking my wounds, trying to figure the things out. But one thing I can tell you is I hold my head extremely high, not because we were a success, but because I took this risk and we were a success, if that makes sense. And I did learn that, I'm confident in my abilities. And no matter what the challenge may be put in front of me, I'm going to figure it out. And that's something that I'm not the only person alone. Lots of people out there should have that attitude, because it's just fact, and it's the way it is. And I'm extremely proud that I took the risk. Am I sad that we're gone and it's not there again? But I'm ready to stick my neck out there for the next thing that's there and take it as it comes.